Welcome to Alaska Report. I'm Senator Mark Begich. This show is designed to inform you about issues, programs, and people important to Alaska. In this edition of the Alaska Report, I'm welcoming two congressional fellows I work in my office here in Washington. Lieutenant Colonel Glenn Johnson, an Army Congressional Fellow, and Lieutenant Commander Bill Mowitt of NOAA Congressional Fellow. Gentlemen, welcome to the show, and I look forward to our good discussion about your particular areas of expertise and how they impact our offices in Alaska and obviously here in Washington. To start, I should explain a short bit about the Congressional Fellow. A fellow is a person who is provided to a member of Congress to work on staff at no cost to the member. The cost is paid for by the agencies, which I must say I appreciate. This allows people with expertise such as Glenn and Bill to work on behalf of our state in our casework for Alaska issues, and also provide valuable knowledge of the areas of expertise that they have. First, again, let me, if you want, expand a little bit on what I laid out here. If you want, maybe Bill, you can explain how you got to become a fellow, and Glenn the same thing, but let's start with Bill.
Well, Senator, I was working in NOAA headquarters here in Washington, D.C., and sort of saw the importance of the agency NOAA and Congress working really closely together and being able to effectively communicate. So that led me to be interested in learning more about what was going on down on this end of the mall. And
you're still smiling, which is good.
Yeah, I've only been here a few months, but
and let's explain to the viewers, when you say the mall, this is not a shopping mall. It is the Washington Mall, which is basically the green space between all of us here and all the buildings. Mall. Right. So, Glenn, why don't you tell me a little bit how you became a fellow and kind of what your expertise is that they grabbed you into?
Yes, sir. I actually applied for the Army Congressional Fellowship. The Army selects 25 fellows a year to come work in a member's office. After that year, you go back and actually a utilization tour for the Army doing legislative stuff. So what I did was I applied for the fellowship, and I was very fortunate to get selected. It's a pretty competitive board, and very fortunate.
Well, I will tell you to the viewers and the folks listening, there's no question that having the fellows in our office from both NOAA and the military DOD has been very, very valuable to us. You know, the expertise you bring, your ability to kind of understand who to call, which we always like in your agencies, because you know kind of the maze of the federal bureaucracy when we need stuff from the Army or NOAA or just generally from the Defense Department. You know these routes of how to get through it and respond to our constituency, which is very important to us, and I know to the people. For NOAA, you know, again, people may not know what NOAA is, but it's the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. I have to be honest with you, NOAA is one of these that in Alaska, a lot of people don't realize how much impact they have and how much work they do in Alaska. When you look at NOAA's budget, you know, 40% or so is Alaskan related in some way. So it's a very extensive agency for us. Tell me, Bill, if you can, just kind of some of the work you have been working on, or you've been before even you came aboard, but what you've been working on that affects Alaska from NOAA's perspective. And Glenn, I'll probably ask you obviously the same thing, and I know you're both planning trips to Alaska in our recess in August, so you could maybe talk a little about that too, Bill.
Yes, sir, and this might be a good point for me to explain why I'm wearing a uniform. Almost everyone that works for NOAA, it's about 12,000 people, is a civilian, a federal employee. But NOAA has a lot of ships and aircraft to go out and do the research that we need to do for all of NOAA's missions. And so they have a very small uniform service, the NOAA Corps, which I'm a member of. And our primary mission is to operate NOAA ships and aircraft.
Right.
So that's why I'm in uniform. Most people haven't heard of it, but you know, we think it's a real important part of what NOAA does. In terms of what NOAA does in Alaska and what I've done in Alaska, my last assignment was on the NOAA ship Oscar Dyson, which is homeported in Kodiak. And I think we all know how important commercial fishing and recreational fishing is to Alaskans, to the economy and just to the people of the state. And one of NOAA's jobs is to manage those fisheries, to help ensure they're sustainable. And Alaska has some of the best managed fisheries in the world.
We would argue that we have the best sustainable fisheries in the world, with now 62% of the fresh caught fish come from Alaska for this country, which is a pretty, when you think about it, pretty significant. And NOAA has responsibility to make sure, as you said, that they're not only managed for this season or the next season, but for generations to come. And that's a huge role and responsibility, sometimes with conflict, but also long-term benefit to the economic well-being of the state. Is that a fair analysis or statement?
Absolutely, and you know, in order to ensure those fish are sustainably managed, you know, the real base of that is data. You need to know what's out there, how many fish are out there, where they are, and so our mission on the Oscar Dyson, our sort of our bread and butter mission, was surveying fish in the Bering Sea, the pollock fisheries, the most valuable fishery in the United States. And our job was to go out there and survey the pollock and help the scientists understand how many fish were there in order so they could set the catch limits to ensure the fish was sustainably managed.
Let me ask, Glenn, tell me, I mean, you're obviously with the Army, but you do kind of, from our office perspective, kind of a broad sweep on DOD issues, not only Department of Defense. Not only do you spend time in going to the Veterans Committee that I'm on or the Armed Services Committee that I'm on, but recognizing the role that Alaska plays in the national perspective, but also the international perspective. Tell me some of the things that you've been engaged in out of the office that might be clearly Alaskan related.
Well, I would tell you just right off, like to go back to a quote from General Billy Mitchell, who said Alaska is the most strategic place in the world. And I definitely agree with that. Didn't, you know, quite understand Alaska and how big it was, et cetera, coming into the office, but to actually experience going there in February and seeing some of the issues.
I want to take note of that, if I can pause you there.
Yes, sir.
To the folks watching us. You went in February. Now that's extra credentials. You know
yes.
that, don't you? And I think you went up north, didn't you? Did you just go to Anchorage? I can't remember.
We went to Anchorage, and then we went to Fairbanks.
Fairbanks.
Yes.
So you went to Anchorage and Fairbanks in February. So
yes,
you
sir.
get extra score points, and we appreciate that.
I definitely, as a matter of fact, the folks in Anchorage, in Fairbanks, they told me that it's not negative 25 degrees, so I didn't get the T-shirt. So I'm going to have to come back. So I guess I'll have to come back.
Well, we'll fix that for
yes,
you.
Sir. But just the opportunity to get there was truly amazing, and I'm looking forward to going back there in August. The military legislative assistant Lindsay and I are going up there for a week.
Excellent.
And actually going to visit all the military installations, and as well going to the Kodiak launch site, as well as Fort Greely this time to visit the missile defense sites as well.
And is your goal, and really for both of you, I mean, when you go on these trips, when you go back to Alaska, I know sometimes people always worry, are we just spending money on trips and traveling? But when you go, you're really trying to figure out what kind of the hot buttons are, what the challenges are. Like we'll take the bases, for example, trying to figure out all the pieces. So when we're sitting in committees, we're able to kind of represent that view or those issues in a much more informed way. Is that your target when you're in August, for example? You're not just going, some people might say, oh, he's going in August, maybe he's fishing.
Right.
But really, what you're trying to do is understand how it all connects so you can deliver that message clearer back here. Is that a...
That's definitely a fair assessment. To be able to go there and to get on the ground and actually see some of the issues that the folks have there, and it brings actually credibility, to your work. And so when you're, voicing certain things and certain issues, you can stand it and say it with confidence because you've been there and experienced it, and you heard straight from, some of the command briefings, et cetera,
right.
and understand where they're coming from. So to get that perspective of it, and then to bring it back, as you mentioned, into committees, and committees and staff meetings, et cetera, it really helps big time.
Well, I think also your knowledge or going to, for example, the whole idea of the missile defense system, which, as you know, we fought last year to make sure it got maintained, and now it's aggressively being supported by the administration. That wasn't necessarily the case last year, but we
right.
worked on it. We convinced them this was the right thing to do on missile defense, and now it's really part of their discussion as an important instrument for our national defense, which last year we were in kind of an iffy condition. Today they're spending money, they're enhancing it, they're making sure that it is a critical component. So part of your task up there is to make sure that work's being done.
Absolutely.
And report back that what you hear from the ground, not just, because sometimes we sit around here and we have great hearings and people come in and do the razzmatazz, and then we kind of wonder, is that exactly what's happening? So being on the ground will really give us the the real story. And
That's right.
we're hopeful that the story will be exactly as they have told us here in D.C., that it's all moving along on the right path. And I believe, based on what we're hearing and we're seeing, it's happened. So you're going to help us confirm that. So it's all in your shoulders. You
That's
know
right.
that. let me ask you, Bill. I know one of our big issues is the whole Arctic and what's going on up there. And as we have, and you have worked on legislation with us on how to manage legislation to recognize the importance of the Arctic, not only from oil and gas exploration, transportation, military. I mean, there's a great discussion about the military and what they need to be doing, the Coast Guard and their role up there. We're going to have some, a field hearing up there in the first part of August and try to get a better understanding of the needs of the Arctic. And you're going to be engaged in that, is that right? You're going to come up with us?
Yes, sir. I'm planning to go up to Barrow with you towards the middle of August.
Not in January, but in August. And that's okay. We're giving you some credit still. Don't worry.
All right, I'll take it. And as you well know, Alaska is seeing the effects of climate change, more rapidly than anywhere else in the United States. And so, getting up to the Arctic and talking to the folks in Barrow and in the YK Delta and sort of hearing firsthand what they're seeing is really a critical part for us to bring back here and to be able to convince other members of Congress that this is an important issue that we really need to tackle now.
Right.
So our plan is to go up there and to talk to folks, and we're actually doing a field hearing up there, as you know.
Yep.
And
NOAA plays a pretty big role in this issue. Is that a fair statement? I mean, people
absolutely.
On Arctic policy and what's going to happen, NOAA will be a player. So even after your fellowship is done with us, your work in NOAA will be of value because you've now experienced the Arctic.
Absolutely, and the Arctic is a key focus area for NOAA, I think, as you well know, and the agency has lots of missions, one of which is to keep track of the climate and the effects of climate change. And so
they do the weather.
Yeah.
They don't create it, but they manage it. Or they tell us
we
what
get
it is.
blamed for it.
You get blamed for it. That's right. That's right.
So keeping track of just the pace and the impacts of climate change, but then also managing the fisheries in the Arctic. We have a role providing charting, so supporting marine transportation up there is a big role. So, as the Arctic opens up, as there's more and more economic activity up there, all of the government is going to have to really expand their role up there. I know the Navy's doing a great job of being really proactive about what they're going to be doing up there.
Yeah, they actually have I'm trying to remember what it was called. I think it was called Task Force
Climate Change.
Task Force Climate Change, which they were one of the first military organizations to recognize the importance of it, but also where Alaska fits into this equation, which from our perspective is a very valuable piece.
Yeah, they've really got a strategic focus on what the open Arctic Ocean is going to mean strategically. But even the Coast Guard and NOAA, all the government's going to have to provide a more full range of services up there, and so the time to be thinking about that is now. The idea is to get ahead of the curve a bit.
Well, let me do this. We've our first segment here. We're out of time, but we're going to be back. We're going to take a quick break here on the Alaska Report. When we come back, we'll continue talking to the two congressional fellows currently working in my Washington office, Lieutenant Commander Bill Mowitt, a NOAA Congressional Fellow, and Lieutenant Colonel Glenn Johnson, an Army Congressional Fellow. We'll be right back.
It's one of the many ways to fight osteoarthritis pain. For more information on managing pain, go to fightarthritispain.org.
On January 12th, a massive earthquake ravaged Haiti's capital, taking the lives of hundreds of thousands of people and leaving millions more without water, food, and shelter.
During our time in public service, we've witnessed firsthand the extraordinary generosity of the American people in the face of tragedy, here at home and around the world.
But there's still so much to do. So please join the Clinton Bush Haiti Fund and other organizations as we answer the call to help Haiti build back better. Thank you.
Welcome back to the Alaska Report. I'm Senator Mark Begich. Today I'm talking to two congressional fellows who are currently working in my Washington office. Lieutenant Colonel Glenn Johnson from the Army and Lieutenant Commander Bill Mowitt with NOAA. Let me continue if we can. We took a short break there, but we were talking about the Arctic a little bit. And it's interesting actually the connection, because one of the other pieces to what will happen or not happen in the Arctic is what we do as a country with the law of the sea, which is a pretty big issue, which is very interesting because there's great debate here in Congress. It's a treaty that we need to sign an agreement. We have not signed it yet. Both myself and Senator Murkowski support this effort. We think it's very important to get done for a variety of reasons. One, from NOAA's perspective, but also the military has a role here. And actually, it's interesting, in my Armed Services Committee discussions that we've had, we've asked some of the folks who have presented, some of the, I call them the ones with a lot more metal on their shoulders,
right.
but the guys, the 3 or 4 star guys. And one of the things we've talked about was why they think it's important. And they talk about the military and the future of the activity up there. And I think in a lot of ways, even though there's NOAA, Department of Interior, EPA, all these federal agencies over in kind of the domestic policy activity, but the military also has a role and will potentially have a future role in the Arctic. And maybe, I don't know if you want to comment on that, Glenn. I don't know if that's your area of interest or expertise, but I know that's a pretty important piece long term for us.
Yes, sir. It definitely is important. As a matter of fact, we know DOD supports the Law of Sea Treaty, and I think to be able to do that, because we just came out talking about the QRF just came out.
Now you got to tell them all that. There's one thing about the military guys, you always have these initials for everything. So tell them what that is,
well,
so what people viewing here.
Well, I'm sorry, the QDR, the Quadrennial Defense Review report, actually came out and actually discussed some of those things in the Arctic, and some of the things,
some of the investments we need to make.
Some of the investments we need to make, some of the corporations we need to make with other countries, et cetera, and that being one, the law of the sea treaty would definitely help out.
Well, one of the things we know on the law of the sea, which is kind of interesting, both Senator Murkowski and I have done a couple of presentations jointly on this, and as other countries are figuring out what their outer continental shelf land mass is, we're just kind of, and I'm exaggerating a little bit, we're not twiddling our thumbs too much, but we don't have the authority to argue over some of that jurisdiction because we're not part of the treaty. And so the end result is, as other countries map their land mass underneath, and it is estimated, this is the latest information I have, that our outer continental shelf could extend as far out as the size of California off our coast, which is, I mean, you know, if I told that to some other senator, they wouldn't believe it, but in Alaska we believe in large things, so we recognize, of course, why not? But I mean, it's pretty significant, and if you think about it, it's not only mineral and oil and gas, but the other thing I know with NOAA, because we have no fishing up there right now, is the potential of new fishing areas. And if we're not careful, if we're not part of the law of the sea, these other countries will already make their arrangements on what they do with that fish. And I think I know that's a NOAA concern that they have.
Absolutely, and I think the United States is in a position where we may be leaving a lot on the table in terms of resources. So it's fish, it's oil and gas, it's
transportation network,
mineral resources, and without that treaty, we're just kind of leaving that all
hanging
there.
Out there. Let me ask you, if I can, Glenn, I didn't mean to interrupt you there, Bill, but Glenn, I want to zip back for a second. I'm going to kind of shift a little bit. As you know, in Alaska, we spend a lot of time in our offices working with the military on all levels, because we have a unique relationship, a very tight relationship with our military. But also we have a lot that have been going overseas, to Afghanistan and Iraq. I've never asked you this, so I don't know, and you might refresh my memory here if I've forgotten, and that is if you've been to Afghanistan, Iraq, and any thoughts you might have on there. I know you can't say too much because you're in the uniform, but have you been in either one yet?
Sir, I deployed to 2008, 2009 to Qatar, which of course is in the Middle East, and I was with the Joint Psychological Operations Task Force doing operations there. So did not have the opportunity to go to Iraq and Afghanistan, but the forces.
But in the region in a certain degree.
Right, and the forces we had command and control of was actually located in Iraq and Afghanistan and other locations.
And I know that's a big discussion we have in armed services. One of the big things we talk about is the services the veterans need to have when they come home. That after serving or it's still in continuous service. I think one of the big issues we get a lot of calls on is, you know, where can I access my VA, or I need some additional assistance, or I need to figure out how to take care of my family while I'm overseas. I mean, we spend a lot of time, I know we do a lot of casework.
Yes, sir.
And I don't know how much you've been having to do, but I know CW in our Anchorage
Yes,
office is kind of like the lead caseworker. But that's one of the things we spend a lot of time on. And even people who, you know, we've had some military folks get bamboozled by business people trying to take advantage of them. And we've had to kind of weave through that. Is that some of the work you get to help out on?
Yes, sir. I've had the opportunity to take several phone calls and return several letters, you know, pertaining to certain veterans issues, and to follow up and just to give folks the ground truth on you know, what they're actually qualified for, etc. Is probably more the story than anything.
Benefits and
exactly. It's probably more the story than anything, because what folks get, as you mentioned, some misinformation, you know, they be receiving. So it's nothing more than just laying out the facts for folks and letting them understand that, you know, here's what you qualify for and here's what's available to you.
I know when we get about, you know, 1,000 letters, phone calls, emails every single week on a variety of issues, and as you know, staff gives me kind of a selection of them each night, and the ones that are very interesting to me are those that have an issue that we've resolved and are calling to thank us, and lots of times they're around medical care or expenses that they incurred that they probably shouldn't have occurred. Right. So it's very, very rewarding, and some of that times we spend on these big lofty issues like the Afghanistan war, the Iraq war, but when you narrow it down, what we do is about people. Yes, and trying to solve those problems. So again, to the Alaska audience, I mean, having the fellows here help us get through some of those many, many concerns and complaints and issues that we have.
Absolutely.
Now Bill, we got back recently from a trip, a whirlwind trip down to Louisiana. We went down there to kind of see the impacts of the blowout. We took a helicopter ride, and when I say that, it sounds like it's a little small one. It's a Black Hawk, which I have to say, if you're going to fly around in a helicopter, there's no better piece of machinery than that Black Hawk. And I'm glad Alaska has some. Actually, I think we got a complaint from one of the guys there that Alaska's National Guard got the black helicopter before the military did, and they were a little agitated about that. But I said, well, that's the way it works in Alaska. But tell me kind of what your thoughts. I mean, it was very interesting and I thought informative. Some myths that were out there that we've heard in the Beltway here. But tell me kind of your thoughts of what you thought about that trip, besides the feeling like it was 115 degrees.
It was definitely a little warm, but first of all, I'd like to thank the Louisiana National Guard for that was actually my birthday.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That's right.
And so I got a great helicopter ride for my birthday, so that wasn't.
They did
so
a great
bad.
job. They
were fantastic.
Yeah, we got to give them credit for that.
So that part was enjoyable, but also I think very informative. I think, you know, we both saw a lot of the same things. Just really a massive response, I think, from both from the federal government, the Coast Guard, and NOAA, and everybody, and from BP. And certainly everything we heard is that they were working very closely together, in close cooperation. And so I think that was heartening to see. And I certainly just talking to a lot of Alaskans.
A lot of Alaskans. The lunch was, I got to admit, that was surprising to me. We went to a large facility, kind of a lunchroom. It was designed really as a training center, if I remember this right, that BP had for like 150 people a day, maybe. And they were doing up to 1,000
I think
meals.
they had 1,200 people
1,200
there in the space designed for 150, so a little crowded.
A little crowded. And we sat down, had lunch with first 4 or 5 people, then it kept growing.
I think word got out.
Word got out, and there's so many Alaskans that have lent their expertise, and we got to give them, along with the guard that's down there, and that's in the local guard, but also just from a very parochial, obviously, the Alaskans that have put their expertise down there to really help out, from logistics to IT to just basic cleanup, was pretty impressive. I was figuring I was going to run into a few, but it seemed like we couldn't get up before running into another Alaskan.
Yeah, and they just kept coming over, and they all want to meet the senator, so we sort of got them in there with you.
Yeah, and they had good information.
Yeah, and we it was great to sort of get their perspective on what was going on down there, and really talk to the people that are actually doing the cleanup, seeing what's going on firsthand. Not filtered through the media at all.
Right. Or these kind of, this is my words, you don't have to echo this, these crazy committee processes where people testify, then when they're done talking, they're kind of done. Down there, what we got to see is real people working every day.
Yep.
And who have been working, a lot of them working 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off.
Yeah, 16 hours a day.
16 hours a day. That operation, if I remember this right, was running 7 days a week, 24 hours a day.
Oh, absolutely.
Nonstop.
Yep.
And so it was impressive to see. Wow. And as I asked one of the people from the Coast Guard that was in charge down there, I said, how'd you set this operation? How long did it take you? And he looked at me, and I loved his statement. He said, we set up a multi-billion-dollar business, meaning the emergency response, in 2 weeks. Now that's impressive.
That is impressive. That's
impressive. And what that reassured me, even though there's challenges with this blowout, there's no question about it, that I think a lot of resources down there doing everything possible to make it happen. Now, let me ask you again, you both have experienced kind of the congressional life on Capitol. Give me your thoughts there, Glenn, what it's like, and you can be honest. It's okay. I mean, it is kind of chaotic at times. There's no question about that.
It's like, as I've heard the term, watching sausage being made, and you really don't want to see what goes into it, but just the end result, it's a good product at the end. But it's been an awesome experience. Very impressed with the staff and the wealth of knowledge with the staff and the work ethics. Of course, coming from the military, we have strong work ethics.
You betcha you guys do, yeah.
Coming here and actually seeing and witnessing that, it's quite refreshing. Because I guess more of ignorance before coming in to actually see how this whole thing works. But just the wealth of knowledge and just very impressed with the staff, and just good opportunity.
Well, don't let them say that too loud, because they'll want me to give them days off or something. Bill, tell me your impressions. I mean, coming to the Capitol, there's no question that even my experience here now, a little over a year and a half, you have perceptions, and then you kind of land, and then you go to work. And tell me what your thoughts were.
I'd certainly reflect the colonel's observation of just sort of the work ethic and the long hours people are putting in, but for the most part, it's people that are really dedicated, to their particular issue, and they just really believe that, this is a great opportunity to make things better and to try and fix problems for people. And so, if you have that kind of belief, I think it just naturally follows that you're gonna be at your desk till it's dark.
And I have to say that. If you said that in Alaska until it's dark, it'd never happen. But saying that,
it feels like
what's interesting about where you guys work. You work in the bullpen, which is a very compacted area, but everyone's working on a variety of issues. And when I go in there, it seems always there's a level of excitement or movement or issues, and sometimes frustration because maybe a bill isn't moving, or you thought something was moving, or even what I think is most interesting, when someone kind of does something that's kind of unique and really solves a problem, they're quick to kind of share it with everyone. So, but let me say, because we've hit our time flies, and I want to say first, thank you both for your service to your country, but also to our state and your special roles that you're playing in our office. It has made a difference and added to our ability to respond to our constituency. So I want to thank you for that. Again, you have seen two great Americans who serve in our office serve you in Alaska, both Lieutenant Commander Bill Mowitt of NOAA and Lieutenant Colonel Glenn Johnson with the Army. Both these guys have done an excellent job in working for you every single day, and I want to thank them for that. This will conclude our show today, and I just really want to say thanks for tuning in to the Alaska Report. This is Senator Mark Begich. I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks for watching.